Poverty Law Center. Did I get that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got it right.
Scandal, honey. It is still trending. They have indictments coming down. So you touched on it on your Tuesday X space, but that's X. I wanted to formally, talk about it, and do a video on it, for YouTube purposes. So
Okay.
I want to play this clip of a couple of clips of the DOJ breaking the news about the Southern poverty.
Good afternoon. Today, a few minutes ago, in the Middle District of Alabama, a grand jury returned an 11-count indictment charging the Southern Poverty Law Center with 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of bank fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. According to the charges in the indictment, the SPLC is a nonprofit entity that purports to fight white supremacy and racial hatred by reporting on extremist groups and conducting research to inform law enforcement groups with the goal of dismantling these groups. As the indictment describes, the SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred. The indictment describes this conduct in detail, but one troubling example is that the SPLC was paying a member of the leadership group that planned the Unite the Right protest in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 that resulted in the death of a person and injured dozens more. This particular person being paid by the SPLC allegedly received approximately $270,000 over the course of 8 years. In total, according to the indictment, between 2014 and 2023, SPLC paid at least $3 million to 8 individuals at least. These individuals were affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan, United Klans of America, National Socialist Movement, Aryan Nations affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club, the Nationalist Socialist Party of America, Nazis, and the American Front. Now, as the indictment lays out, after SPLC paid members of these extremist groups, it created work product that reported on these activities that the members participated in or contributed to. And to that end, it was doing the exact opposite of what it's told its donors it was doing.
What we're here today is to announce what the general just told you. The Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive sweeping indictment, has been charged with allegations of fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple of brief things here. The Southern Poverty Law Center themselves advertise to raise money to dismantle violent extremist groups for a period of at least a decade. They use their donor network to raise money to purportedly dismantle violent extremist groups. However, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, used the money they raised from their donor network to actually pay the leadership of these very groups. I just want to say that again. They used the fraudulently raised money by lying to their donor network, thousands of Americans, to go ahead and actually pay the leadership of these supposed violent extremist groups. The groups, as the general laid out, include the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, Unite to Right, National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nation Motorcycle Club, and the National Socialist Party of America, and also the American Front. In at least one of these matters, our investigation revealed that funds were used to facilitate the commission of further state and federal offenses, totaling over $3 million. Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud, conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center in the perpetration of this scheme and fraud, but rather fictitious entities they stood up to perpetuate this ongoing fraud. This is a serious and egregious violation of a group that purported to dismantle violent extremist groups, but in turn actually only fueled the hatred. This is an important case brought by President Trump's administration. We're thankful for the president for his leadership and funding of not just the FBI and DOJ, but his commitment to go out there and wipe out fraud and conspiracy and waste and abuse wherever it occurs, including the Southern Poverty Law Center. Even though this money was made to appear to be coming from legitimate people and legitimate entities, we at the FBI, with our great partners at the Department of Justice and in the state of Alabama, were able to comb through a decade worth of material, a scheme that took a decade to build, so that we were able to follow the money, because money never lies, and they got caught. As the Attorney General said, these charges are varying, they are widespread and wide-ranging, and this investigation is very much ongoing. Today we're here to announce the charges of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and this investigation and the individuals who are responsible will be brought to justice. Thank you, General. We're here today.
Okay, my analysis, there's a lot of tedious research that's been done, and it takes a long time to ferret out what they're talking about. What you're getting here is a long-term effort of a fire department with no fires to put out, so they set a few so they will maintain their legitimacy. The Southern Poverty Law Center came into being more than a half century ago, and it used to be a resource for research, case law, stuff like that, that would help out when it came to successfully bringing a lawsuit on behalf of the impoverished or indigent plaintiff. It also was a source of information that could assist in the defense of certain criminal charges that 50-some years ago were often brought for unwholesome reasons. Somewhere in here, it morphed into, let's get the Baba Yaga, let's get rid of Trump so we can get, at the time, Joe Biden returned to office for a second term, and then Kamala Harris in for her first term, which probably would have cemented a very poisonous thing in the American system. You notice they said the National Socialist Party of America. The German edition, the National Socialist Workers of or the National Socialist Party of Germany, has the acronym that history knows as Nazi, Nazi. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're talking about. So it was used to finance these entities. And then you notice from when this was contemporary with events, when that Charlottesville thing was going on, who were they blaming? Donald Trump. And it turns out that the Poverty Law Center was behind it all. Now, you notice that they did not get indicted for supporting these fascist entities. They got indicted for trying to conceal it and laundering money and using the mails and also wire communications, which means what we're doing right now over the air, to conceal what they were up to, and that's what the indictments reflect. Mm-hmm. I imagine we're going to get some indictments coming down on BLM, and that's probably going to be delayed until the stage is set with what's happening here, and going after BLM will not be so, what's the word for it? Politically incorrect or phrased.
Right.
So we're going to see this, and it's a deplorable thing. I was personally aware of the Poverty Law Center, and when I was still in law school, when I got out of law school, it was something that people went to, and that was in combination with a number of financed entities financed by Congress and state legislative bodies to set up legal services programs so that you could deal with poverty law. That is, those people who had been forgotten, who were financially unable to afford the services of an attorney, they did have representation. That proved to be unpopular because a lot of entrenched interests got disturbed when their feathers got ruffled. There were some things that were being done that weren't good, but they drifted.
Right.
And in the process of drifting, their mission switched from poverty law, which is inherent in their title, to advocating certain things, and they got captured by the rainbow cult thing eventually, feminism and some other things, and they stopped trying to represent people and started drifting into being a moving engine on what went on initially, not waiting for a court case, but to make it happen on the streets. And unfortunately for them, that drifted so far to the left that it bordered on National Socialism, aka Nazi or fascist activity. It's a shame, but we have this kind of thing, and I have said this for years. When you look back over everything, and someone's main attack point is setting up a boogeyman, the Baba Yaga, Donald Trump, and the evil Republicans, be careful, because that means somebody's trying to sneak something by you, and that is drifting away from our Bill of Rights into a thing where there is no freedom of the press, no freedom of speech, activities are restricted, certain boutique legal situations get preference because they're politically correct rather than being legally justified, like statute of limitations being extended for 25 years for certain things, whereas there are 1 or 2 for more serious things. So this is a trend that's been going on, and it looks like the American public in this 2024 election cycle sort of put the brakes on a very poisonous thing. I think we need to be very cautious about what the press is telling us, because if you will recollect what was going on contemporaneously with the Charlottesville situation, is the press was telling us about this horrible villain who was out there trying to push Klansmen and fascist and racist and such like, and what a horrible threat that person was to the American way and to ordinary decent people. But now we find out that it was one of those entities that was saying this that was actually behind it, or at least the allegations.
So I wanted to highlight this here real quick, because this is the press release from the Department of Justice, and there says between 2014 and 2023, so that's like 9 years rounded off. The SPLC secretly funneled $3 million in donated funds to individuals who were associated with various violent extremist groups, including KKK, Aryan Nation, National Socialist Party of America. You always say National Socialist Party, Nazis. You always say that. But to your point, in what you were saying, that, this didn't happen overnight. This is over a 10-year span for the Democrats to usher in Joe Biden, to prosecute Trump, and they wanted to usher in, follow up with Kamala after Joe Biden. And it's funny because this is when the investigation started in 2014, which was the end of Obama's administration, correct?
2 years before it ended.
2 years before, and then Trump comes in 2016. So all through his administration, they're labeling him a racist, or and all this, and going into Joe Biden. So this was all planned.
Well, one thing I want to add, I don't think the investigation started in 2014. That's when it appears that this activity started. I don't think the Obama administration was responsible for this. This is, as I've spoken about, bureaucracies. People get in and they are in for 10, 15, 16, 24, 25, 31 years in some place. And you have this federal investigative bureaucracy, and sometimes it does the right thing and sometimes not. So people can say something's going wrong. I'm going to check this out and start taking notes. And then later somebody gets in, I hear you've been taking notes. What have you got? Well, let me show you what we have right now. Okay, go for it. We understand the danger. The last administration wanted this to happen. So we've got the news media saying this evil boogeyman is out there trying to solicit Klansmen and racists and Nazis and everything. And it turns out that this is all a setup to give them credibility because, as I pointed out before, they almost had it made, and then they went overboard. And you can see it in small things that aren't so small sometimes. For instance, that Budweiser Light commercial where they had that punk in the blue bra and the blue panties and the bubble bath looking like a total freak. And that was supposed to sell a beer to an audience that turned out to be 86% male, mostly straight, to buy Bud Light. And it was a disaster. And then they were pushing strongly about boys pissing in girls' bathrooms and showering with the girls and putting on sports bras and going out and knocking the girls around in girls' sports and all sorts of other things with, trannies going out lecturing to 4 and 5-year-olds and having them sing songs to set up a rapport with the children to get inside their heads. And it's not good. And that's an important thing. I'm 78 years old right now, and I can remember when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, some of the things that we got taught as songs and some of the little sayings that we had when I was in elementary school. And, 70 some years later, I still remember them. So I just shudder to think what's in the heads of some of these children that will influence their lives over the next 60, 70, 80, well, I guess they'll live longer than 90 some years of their lives. So they've been doing this, and they almost got away with it. And we got told how it was hopeless. This evil man was going to go to jail, and he was impeached, and all of this other stuff, and it was horrible. And he got 32 convictions on a kangaroo court situation and all of this mess. And
Cancel.
Oops, something went wrong.
Cancel.
it turns out to have been an outright lie. And then they tried to tell it loud and long, and every time somebody stood up and said, oh, that's not what's going on. There is election fraud, and it was not Donald Trump. The election fraud was turned against him. And then we've looked at Georgia and Arizona and all across the country and seen the huge fraud that was actually in place, and the person that was villainized was the only one, well, not the only one, but the primary one telling the truth.
Well, so, before I play this clip here, I want to swing back to specifically the Southern Poverty Law Center, because I am so tired of Black suffering in America, the history of Black suffering being used as propaganda.
Well, yeah, and then this other thing. See, growing up on a hard playground where people punched it out and the teachers walked very slowly over while the fight was going on, where for sport we ran to dozens and talked about everybody's mama is a sport, and it was hard, and there were things going on out in the streets. I can tell you this. Uh, it's if you just let somebody get away with this stuff, it turns into a real live mess. And they've just been letting people get away with it. And the public has gotten too soft and dependent. And it has been told it's a victim. Over. You're a victim. Over. And people are slothful. They're lazy. They don't work hard. They don't do their homework. They expect somebody because they know that everyone knows they've been dreaming of being this. So the academics are cut down. The breadth requirements in colleges and universities are cut because you don't want to interfere with somebody getting that magic GPA so they can get in grad school and then become incompetent at the practice or whatever they needed those higher level postgraduate degrees for, where the state of Washington says if you graduate from a law school, you don't have to take the bar anymore, where the kids don't need to learn how to write longhand and they don't need addition, multiplication, and subtraction because supposedly it can be done on a cell phone, but we know how the cell phones go down and how they aren't exactly reliable and everybody's helpless. They're talking about electronic money, and I have a sneaking suspicion one of the driving engines behind that is you've got people who come out of school ignorant and too stupid to count change. You know, Mickey D's literally doesn't have numbers on the cash register. They've got pictures of the product. And then I've talked to managers who said they can't even get some of the more recent employees on identifying the pictures with the real product. So,
But I think a lot of that, I think a lot of that stems from we have allowed.
Yes.
Because
I'm victim. Oh, somebody's mistreating me.
But it's an insult to our ancestors, meaning my great grandparents, your grandparents. You know, it's an insult to them who really lived through some harsh times. But so to bring it forward in present day is used as propaganda. But we allow it to be used as propaganda. We're not pushing back like Jewish people, and I'm not talking about the Zionists. I'm talking about Jewish people. No, you can't play or propagandize their lineage.
Well, it's like it's worse than that.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be a problem, which is why the Poverty Law Center came to existence 55, 56 years ago. But it's not the same. So now the bad things come from the people that everybody was trying to protect. When you look at the wrong being done, it's not white folk doing it to anybody. It's the black folk doing it to themselves. It's the Al Sharptons and the Maxine Wastewaters and the Cory Bookers and all of that bunch and the AOCs and, you know, the Ilyan Umars, you know, and the Jasmine Crockett bunch and that mayor that got run out of office up in Illinois that moved down to Georgia to run for an office as a Republican, you know. That's what you're getting. And when our heroes become sissified freaks who everybody looks up to, but you find out what they've been doing behind the scenes that they don't deny, and it's kind of pathetic. It's like, where are the heroes? But you see, what we get is this victimization thing. Remember, it starts with, oh my God, we have to protect the children from bullies, the teachers and the police and the parents. We have to get involved so the children don't get bullied. Well, half of growing up to be an adult human throughout the entire time we've been on this planet is learning how to deal with bullies one way or the other, and also putting the bullies in their place. So now the kids don't have to do that. And it's not just a black thing. Look at Back to the Future, McFly and Biff and all that stuff. And then you see right now, it's not just black ancestors, it's that we have the equivalent of a pulpit pimp preacher throughout our entire system, and they're telling folk that it's all right to be wrong. Not you committed a sin and you can seek forgiveness. It's not a sin. Go ahead and do it. You're weak. You get your butt kicked all the time, and it's not your fault, so you don't need to try because we owe it to you, which is a little sneak attack to get you dependent on somebody else's handout so you aren't capable of doing for yourself, and it's a big, long scheme that leads to a poisonous end.
I want to play this clip here.
Know that this investigation was opened during the Biden administration and then mysteriously closed. I really don't have any information about why it was closed. And then we started again last year. The FBI did, working with the U.S. Attorney in Alabama. And it's extraordinarily egregious. You just talked about it. But imagine a donor to the SPLC if they were told, by the way, we're going to give the money you're giving us to the Ku Klux Klan. Okay? Like, in some cases, over $1 million. I mean, it's incredible.
Now, they say they're no longer using these informants in this way and that it was necessary because they had all sorts of threats against the organization, firebombing threats and other acts of purported violence. And that's why they had to use these informants. And to that, you say?
Well, to that I say, for one, the indictment charges all the way through 2023. So I'm here to speak about what they're doing right now, but that indictment charges a long period of time through 2023. And second, and more importantly, there's no allegation or information in the indictment that suggests they shared that information with law enforcement. They have communicated.
They said they did.
Well, they have communicated when they so chose with law enforcement over the years. There's no information that we have that suggests that the money that they were paying to these informants and these members of these organizations, they then turned around and shared what they learned with law enforcement. To the contrary, or else we would have known from their own words that they had given this money to these guys, and we didn't know it.
What about Charlottesville and the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally? Were they involved in that?
Yes. So what we allege in the indictment and what the grand jury found is that one of the individuals that they paid was one of the folks who helped organize that terrible event. And so so imagine what we're talking about, Laura. We're talking about an organization that actively came out and just screamed it from the top of their lungs.
So just so people understand, watch this. Did these informants, in some cases, given the evidence you've seen, actually initiate what would ultimately be these activities? And obviously Charlottesville ended with a tragedy.
We know that they were part of those. They were part of it. Whether they were the leaders or the initiators, that'll come out, I think, eventually. But what we do know is that the very entities that this group was raising money to go against are the very entities that they were taking the money in and paying to these entities and these individuals associated with those groups.
What was the money used for?
Well, we don't know, because again, all we know is that they set up these fictitious bank accounts.
Fake names, like the Constitution Group or whatever it was called. Then they had one called Fox Photography.
Right, completely fictitious as far as the investigation has shown.
Okay, yada, yada, yada. Let's get to the crunch. Yeah, I'm sure they occasionally told on some of the people they were funding. They were rat finks. They ratted them out after they set them up to finance them so they could maintain credibility. And also, I just spoke on the science of bureaucracies. You had people who started this up who had been in the bureaucracy for years, decades. They may have not had any allegiance to the Biden administration, and they started it, but we see the Biden administration said stop it because there were those in the Biden administration who were behind Poverty Law Center's little fascist effort here, and it suited their purposes. Like I said, it got caught it almost was too late. So it got caught just in time that Trump got in to stop this, because with 4 more years of this Nazi fascist activity, it would have been too deeply entrenched to do much about it for decades.
True. That is so true. And what about the banks? What role?
The banks probably didn't know what's going on.
Well, with the money being funneled in, you got to deposit it somewhere.
But see, that's why you had so many accounts. Notice there are several $1 million involved, but nobody pays attention because in the scheme of things, they're small accounts. See, you get these banks and you think of them as they're dealing with small depositors, all right? Homeowners and stuff like that. But the homeowners get submerged in the big business accounts, get submerged in the city accounts, the county accounts, the accounts for the sheriff's department, police department, the courts, the assessor's offices.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
You have different organizations, multiple organizations, just multiple different entities that's involved. So it's like if you send the money over here, over there, so this business here or this organization here depositing it, it's not just coming from one or two or three different.
Yeah. You walk into a bank and you see 15, 20 patrons in the bank during a busy hour at a time. Well, let's just take 10 of them, maybe have 24,000 on account. That's $240,000, but they're not going to pay a whole lot of attention to somebody with a $24,000 account max. But you've got 10 of them going, that's $240,000. So they aren't paying attention necessarily that it's the same person. They just, nobody pays attention to this. It doesn't attract anybody's change. And on the big business scale is what you call petty cash.
Right.
But it adds up, see.
It does. But I'm gonna pin it right here because when we come back, I want to dive deeper into Act Blue.
Oh, and then by the way, I'm predicting something.
Well, we can get into that now, Act Blue.
No, but just briefly, before I forget it, I meant to bring it up before. Somebody is going to take a look at BLM's website after they figure out a way to get after them in a politically correct fashion. And one of the things that BLM is not taken off of their website is their disclosure. Every dollar you send to us, 1/3 goes to us, BLM, 1/3 goes to Act Blue, which is a Democratic Party fundraising organization, and 1/3 goes to LGBTQIA plus, as they put it on there, one of our affiliates and partners, etc. So in other words, they're disclosing it, but nobody's paying attention. And then you go down a little bit before that, it says if you want to put on a demonstration or protest, call on BLM to handle the organization, transportation, and logistics, and it's still got that on their site. So in other words, they're planning it. So if there is some riot going on, concrete blocks and bricks have been stacked up in a place that has no construction, so people can have ammunition to throw through the windows of the plate glass in the front of a business. See, that's what they've been saying. So you have a front organization that fools are financing to destroy their own interest, and they don't realize it, but they buy into propaganda. And as we hear on our site, we've got the woke rainbow Negro out there just happy to be a victim, mad when somebody tells them, hey, it's the okie doke, you're getting the game run on you. Become independent and able to deal with your own circumstances rather than depending upon somebody doing it for you. So you get helpless people who become very dependent, and when the process of doing it, they finance their own downfall. That's like a pulpit pimp preacher telling the congregation that the sin is okay, even though the Bible, like Leviticus 20:13, may specifically prohibit it. But here you have a preacher saying it's okay, or the preacher manifesting the same sin that's set forth with very definite terms, So it's like, give it to me so I can save you from going to hell. we have our $10,000 line, our $5,000 line, our $1,000 line, our $500 line, and you got damn fools standing up to go give their money away to a pimp who's doing nothing but having a rich lifestyle at your expense and encouraging you to get yourself sent to hell. So, it's kind of the same thing on the secular level.
Right, but here's the thing, because even there is an investigation currently now regarding the Act Blue that Jim Jordan is bringing to the forefront, because they are saying that foreign election donations were going to Democrats, and Act Blue knew it, and that
yeah,
legal.
But you see, they're not going to get them for the free speech thing, which is a wise thing, because you don't want to have what you're doing backfire even on your side when you start trying to restrict free speech. But they're going to get them on the same thing: money laundering, wire fraud, mail fraud, all sorts of other things to deal with misrepresentation to people to get them to send in money for one thing when it's being diverted to another.
So all in all, going back to the Southern Poverty Law Center, the purpose of that was to eradicate racism and hate crimes.
Yeah. And in 1968, 69, 70, 71, it was nothing like it is now. And that was the tail end of a very, very bad period of time in American history where it was just a few years.
Let me be exact. It was actually founded in 1971 in Montgomery, Alabama.
About
Julian Bond, Joe Lewis, Morris Dees were the three founders. They're gone. Again.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of, say, the Reginald Herbert Smith Community Lawyer Fellowship, the legal services programs that came into effect 69, 70. I had a fellowship from that Reginald Herbert Smith Community Lawyer Fellowship, which is how I got sent to Tennessee from California. But I mean, it was this movement that came into place about, oh my God, the poor people have no recourse to court and they get thrown out of their apartments. They have divorce problems that they can't get out of, so that encourages bigamy and illegitimacy and everything else. We have to give them the opportunity to be heard in court. There's some things that are important to them that nobody stands up for them on, so let's do something about it. It was a movement. So I'm in error about when Southern Poverty Law Center came in. 71 is about right.
And so it says here,
sound about right.
Yeah. Morris Dees, Joseph L. Levin Jr., Julian Bond, as the civil rights law firm, the SPLC began litigation strategy in the 1980s of civil filing suits for monetary damages on behalf of the victims of violence from the KKK. The the SPLC later expanded into broader civil rights litigation, challenging what it characterized as institutional segregation and discrimination, unlawful prison, detention conditions, determinations based on sexual orientation, immigration enforcement practices, and unconstitutional mixing of church and state.
But well, that one, the mixing of church and state, was real big in the early 70s. And it also got into a thing about resistance to desegregation in schools. And it was a trend where I think there was a setup going on that it enhanced the development of the religious private school that became the basis for the destruction of the public schools, which when you started getting flight from the public schools into the private schools that got set up for religious purpose, in other words, the reaction to taking the religion out of the public schools, you set the stage for people being able to destroy public education, which used to be one of the strong points in the country. So the other thing about damages from the Klan and everybody else doing this, yeah, that was interesting. But you see, it's also a setup for smart lawyers today, 50 years after the fact, to set up and say, my client was victimized by the Klan, and the people that you're collaborating with, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the ones that finance the Klan activity you are suing about. And you say the city,
Maybe that wasn't going on back then in the
but
80s.
it is, I'm saying years later, it is now. In other words, if you are right now and you are a smart plaintiff's lawyer, but unscrupulous, like some we have talked about, you claim my client was wronged by the Klan and the Klan infiltrated this police department. So the city of XYZ ought to be responsible to my damaged client because they didn't train properly or they didn't ferret out the Klan activity. But the people that are helping me with this lawsuit are the ones that finance the Klan, so I could go after the city and attack the city and get rid of the police, diminish that influence, so you would have more of this, oh, the poor burglar, it isn't his fault. He's a victim of society. They did him wrong. Oh, the shoplifter only stole $983 and some odd cents, so we shouldn't prosecute him because it wasn't his fault. He was deprived of the various pairs of Air Jordans that he tried to steal, so he is entitled to have what he sees, everybody, et cetera, et cetera. You get the point. So, I mean, it's just...
So I wanted to bring up this point as well.